We feel as though in our world we are sort of calloused and never feel like we have the kind of relationships with other people that maybe our ancestors did. Everything from technology to overpopulation, urban living, day to day work pressures and whatnot keep us maybe from having the kind of closer, more intimate bonding relationships that we imagine our ancestors had. But in some respects, Frost in Death of the Hired Man is trying to explore that as well. I know it deals with an awful lot more than just the relationship between Silas and Warren and Mary, but it is at least about that, okay? And I think that deserves to be looked at very carefully to see what it is Frost is trying to convey in this poem or what questions he's trying to raise. Obviously, Silas is someone who worked for Warren and Mary for many years as their hired help on their farm. That was not an unusual thing. When a fellow had an aptitude at farm work and didn't own any land, then he would hire himself out as kind of a laborer. And you would come sometimes seasonally, sometimes it was a big operation. You'd live on the farm for a while, a few years or whatever. Kind of like ranch hands out here in Texas. It might be seasonal, it might be for a while, it might be permanent. And clearly, in the case of Silas, it was a recurring relationship that he had with them. And the question, in a nutshell, is what do we do with Silas? He has come back. He is clearly beyond his prime. He's not in great health. He's getting up there. And there's some hint throughout the poem that he's losing his faculties in many respects. Of course, at the end, hey, I'm not, this is not a spoiler. The title of the poem is Death of the Hired Man, so he dies. In the last line, we learn of it anyway. And, the man and the woman have a conversation throughout about essentially, directly and indirectly, what are we going to do with this guy? At times, they want to humor him as though he is still capable of doing work for them, that they still need the work done. He seems to be a little bit out of touch. Even Harold, what was his name, Watson or Wilson, um, and and the college kid that he had such an ongoing debate during the haying season with, that he would somehow come back after college or come back from college and rejoin him because he thought, even though the two of them didn't get along so well or were always at each other with arguing and whatnot, he thought the boy was a good worker and he found the boy stimulating and interesting and challenging. Anyway, the key ethical dilemma is what do we do with Silas? Because Silas has family, Silas has other people. There's at least some suggestion that Silas has a brother that might be well off and could take better care of him. Why does Silas come to us so clearly? Why? I mean, in other words, it is clear that whether Silas knows it consciously or not, he's coming back to Warren's place, his farm, to die. And Warren and Mary kind of know this. They don't really overtly say it, but they kind of know it. And they're saying, why is he coming to die at our place? I mean, it's a legitimate question. Geez, I mean, he worked for us. Yes, we paid him, though. And he keeps coming back, and we don't need him. He's too old. Clearly, the old man is probably going to, he's going to kick the bucket soon. He does. And what is he coming back here for? Why is he wanting to end his life here? Why does he want to spend his last remaining time, apparently, even if he doesn't know he's about to die? Why would he want to do that here? Although there's some suggestion that he may be quite aware of the fact that that's the case. Well, this is not his home, they say. But then, of course, there's that famous line that everybody points out and says, home is the place where when you have to go there, they have to take you in. That's a very famous line, but nobody ever reads the line right after it. I should have called it something you somehow haven't to deserve. That's the more interesting line to me. Okay? Home is something that you somehow don't have to deserve. Everything else in life you have to deserve. Everything else I mean, for example, the kind of car you drive. Did you earn enough money to be able to buy that? Did you deserve it? If you win an award, did you deserve it? If you win a trophy, did you deserve it? Did you win it? But home is someplace where you don't have to deserve to be there. Okay, and that's the other side of the coin. I hate the fact that people only quote that one line. They never follow through with the other part because it's two-sided. Yes, home is a place where people have to take you in, right? No matter how much you hate Uncle Fred, if Uncle Fred's down on his luck, he's family. You got to take him, right? But it's another thing on the other flip side of that coin is, and you know what? Uncle Fred doesn't have to deserve it either. Because that's the way it is. But these people are not related. Why do they need to take Silas in? Why do they want to take him in? Why? I mean, it's understandable that they're reticent because they're saying, we're not his family. But I think one of the things that Frost may be doing here is saying, look, family is just one of many different types of constructed human relationships that go deeper than just business or commerce or polite society. Families are what families are. It's what we make them. Things can become family even if there's no blood relation. And the mystery is how does that happen and under what circumstances and the fact that it can happen without you even realizing it, right? Somebody works near you or works with you or lives near you and you've had a long standing maybe business relationship with them or something of that nature, and then all of a sudden when they get older you wouldn't dare turn them away, because somewhere along the way somehow this thing sort of mystically evolved into something more than just the guy I do business with, right? And that's where they're ending up here. Clearly, Silas would prefer to be with them. That is a very, and what I think Warren and Mary don't do is they don't look at this as his honoring them in some respects. They're a little bit more like the rest of us probably would be. I mean, human beings are selfish and shallow, I know. And they look at it more as a, oh God, what do we do with him? And this is awkward. This is embarrassing. This is, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? Um, and that's natural because you're worried. Is this going to be a big deal here? And I'm a little concerned about it. The ambivalence that they display, in my view, isn't to be criticized. It's perfectly understandable. Silas's decision to come to them, in my view, also is perfectly understandable, but it catches them by surprise because they don't think of Silas as family when he first comes back. But eventually, I think they come to terms with the fact that, in a way, he's not blood relative, but he is kind of family. And I think it's an interesting thing. There's a lot to the poem. I'm just only dwelling on that one facet. There are many other facets to it. It deals with mortality. It deals with all kinds of things. But I want to hit that because it's one of the things that I think is one of the most important themes. When we look at the other poem here, Out, Out, gosh, Frost really deals with death a lot, doesn't he? He really does. And so this notion of this happy-go-lucky New England farmer who's thrifty and curmudgeonly and kindly old white-haired man. This guy's got a very, very dark streak to him. I would invite you to do that. I'm not doing Frost justice in this. I realize that these are very short commentaries, but I got to tell you, people who study Frost know that there's an awful lot in here in his poetry about mortality. There's some dark streaks to what he's writing, and clearly, Out Out is about the brevity of life and the fact that life goes on after people die. You want, as a human being, at the end of this poem to say, how could they just go on with their lives? How could they do that? And I don't, but notice how carefully the poet words the final line. It's not condemnatory. In my view, I don't read it that way. And they, since they were not the one dead, turned to their affairs. That's that really walks a fine line between sort of an objective, sort of direct statement of what happened and at least some hint of commentary, but I don't see it as condemnatory. Um, they, since they were not the one dead, turned to their affairs. What do you expect them to do? Rant and rave and pull their hair out? They're not that kind of people. What do you expect them to do? Just end their own lives? No, that's not right either. Um, Are they going to mourn the loss? Of course. But the fact is that dead people can't come back and living people have to go on. And this is the kind of people he's writing about here. These are farmers and they're simple. And life has its hazards and they know it. Life has its tragedies, and they know it. I don't want to say that they don't believe that life has value and that it's not sacred. I think they clearly do, and I think Frost is depicting that in this. But the idea that these people are just going to, wail and moan and pull their hair out and engage in just, emotional pyrotechnics. A, they're not that kind of people, and B, it won't do any good. He's gone. It's sad, it's frightening, it's eerie, and it's grotesque. But he's gone, and this is a world, and these are a type of people where death is commonplace. It does shock you, however, from time to time when you're not expecting it. He personifies the saw, yes, and but also in the notes I said, take a look at the mountains. There are a lot of things going on in this poem. Look at this one line though that I think is really interesting. Then the boy saw all, since he was old enough to know, big boy, doing a man's work, though a child at heart. He saw all spoiled, right? I mean, imagine you're carrying a birthday cake or a wedding cake across a room, and you trip and you fall, and the cake spills all over the floor. Beautiful wedding cake. It's spoiled, and everybody's like, oh no, right? And that's kind of the way the boy feels. Oh no, I'm gonna die, and I didn't think it would happen like this, or I didn't think it would happen today, or I didn't think it would, you know, it's, all of a sudden, it's like the cake. There's no fixing it, right? It's gone. It's my life. It's gone. It's spoiled. It's ruined. It's spilled like the blood that's coming out. It's gone. He saw all. I love the way he says he saw all. He saw all spoiled. That is, he saw all in the sense of, wow. So I've now come to the moment of my death, essentially to the doorstep anyway of death, and to have someone that young have to face their mortality is a really disturbing reality. Um, and that's what Frost wants us to do. He wants us to see that even the young have to face their mortality sometimes. It often shocks us when we talk to terminally ill children or something like that. And we hear them, talk, or we see stories in the news about terminally ill children, about how brave they are. We always want to say how brave they are, and that's true, very true. But on the other hand, also, what choice do they have in some ways? Um, if you're 9 or 10 and you're terminally ill, it's happening early in your life, but you have to come to terms with your mortality, and they really don't have a choice. They deal with it in their childlike manner, but they deal with it because they have to deal with it. And I think that's one of the things that Frost is trying to say. We will all have our moment. We will all see all at some point, and it's just a matter of when, and you don't know when it's going to be. That's a little trite and a little cliched, and I don't want to sell the poem short in that respect, but that's at least one of the things that I think Frost is trying to communicate to us. Not just the brevity of life, but the inevitability of having to confront our mortality and having to confront the mortality of others. And then what do you do with that knowledge? What do you do with the knowledge that you're going to die? What do you do with the knowledge that someone else has died? Well, if you're still living, you have to go on. You simply do. What other choice do you have?